Good morning. I'm not sure whether you're really hungry or... Okay. I'm delighted to be here today. I came to Hubli probably about 10 years back when I took a session on ESA course. I'm happy to be back here. If you look at the theme of the conference, we talked about Jnana Dasoha. As professionals, I think we always believe in that. In addition to that, I always thought we should also have what is called as Jnana Daha. We should be hungry for knowledge. And because as professionals, I think it's important that you need to be an eternal student. Because the more we learn, the more we can serve. I have made presentations across the world, maybe in about 14 or 15 countries. One of the typical characteristics I found in India is Indians are very, very inquisitive. In fact, a professor in America was saying that when he has an Indian student and a Japanese student, he has two challenges. The first challenge is how to make the Japanese student open up and ask questions. The second challenge, he says, is how do I make the Indian student shut up? Because they keep on asking questions. I have made presentations across the world and I found people, especially let us say Asian countries, other countries, when they come to a conference or a workshop, they're looking for specific information or specific knowledge. Let's say you go to America, you do a workshop, the person who has come there has a particular need. You're looking for some practical tips which you can use. Whereas in India, we have this Jnana Daha. We are very, very hungry for knowledge. We use a lot of we're looking for a lot of information. We are voracious readers. But the problem is, Jnana Upyoga. Do we really use knowledge? What is important is not just to acquire the knowledge, it's also important that we need to use the knowledge fruitfully in our profession. As chartered accountants, we have come across information in different ways. We deal with information which was earlier available in physical form, now is available in electronic form. If you look at IT, most of us know IT as income tax. And we practice, and most of professional time is spent on IT, which is income tax. Some of us also know about IT as indirect taxes. So some of us now you find a lot of opportunities in indirect taxes also. There are seminars on indirect taxes and there are a lot of avenues for chartered accountants on indirect taxes. And a few of us also know IT as international taxation. And there are people who specialize in international taxation. The last component, IT, is information technology. Although as chartered accountants, we use information technology extensively, we have very, very few professionals who specialize or practice in information technology. Many of you here, I know, would have done the ESA course. If I ask you, have you done the ESA course? Have you done any information systems audit? The general response is, okay, where are the opportunities? We do not have any opportunities to do information systems audit. It's like a rich farmer in Gurgaon, in a village near Gurgaon, became all of a sudden rich. He got about 30 to 40 crores because the government acquired the land and he didn't know what to do with the money. So he said, what is that asset which I can possess which will demonstrate my wealth? So he went around, he found a lot of people had different types of cars. So he said, which is the car which is most famous? He picked up this Ferrari. And he bought the Ferrari. And every day in the evening, he used to go around in his Ferrari. And when there are people who used to come and greet him, and he used to meet them on the right side, left side, he used to greet them, and somebody calls him from the back, he used to talk to them on the back also. But he never caused an accident. The reason was, he didn't know how to start the Ferrari, so he had bought the most expensive horses. He had put 5 horses in front of the Ferrari, and this Ferrari was being pulled by the 5 horses. So if you look at the power of the Ferrari, now they say it's about 560 horsepower. But physically, that Ferrari is being pulled by 5 physical horses. Quite often, if you look at the usage of information technology, as chartered accountants, we are no better than that farmer. We would like to have the latest phones, iPhones, we would like to have the latest iGadgets, but if I ask you, okay, how many of the features do you really use? I have come across some very eminent professionals who hardly know or use 1 to 2% of the features. So there's no use in investing in information technology, in using the latest gadgets, if you do not know how to use information technology. Now, information technology is all pervasive. There is no escape from this. Now, if you look at yourself, you are carrying information technology with you. Now, you go to your house, you have information technology anywhere. You drive with your car, the car itself, they say, has a lot of processors. In fact, they say now a modern car is a mobile data center. It has multiple processors, not only working individually, but also interfacing with each other. You have a fridge which has a microprocessor. You have this one TV, it has a microprocessor. You pick up any gadget, you will have microprocessor. In the near future, they also expect that you will have microprocessor ingested in your stomach, which can do a health diagnosis for you. So, what is important is whether you accept information technology or use information technology, or you use information technology in this particular way. Now, if you look at this person, now he has got the body of the latest car, but how is he using it? He is using it in the form of a bullock cart. Quite often, chartered accountants say, where are the opportunities for practicing information technology? You need to remember, if you have to specialize in any profession, it's important that you need to devote time, you need to invest in that particular profession. If you look at the business needs of information technology, quite often, quite often in enterprises, you find information technology used differently. This is how it's being used. Okay? What business enterprises require is people who can provide them services. Okay? If you want to use information technology, it's not necessary. Oh, not this. Quite often, enterprises expect this from us when they appoint us. And we are quite capable, and we have demonstrated this type of competency in getting the results done, in getting things done, in achieving the results in any other area. But in the domain of information technology, I think we have a long way to go. The objective of my presentation is to give you a landscape of opportunities which are there in information technology. And this is, like they say, a future waiting to happen. Somebody has said the best way to create the future, to predict the future, is to create it. You can wait for the future to happen, or you can create the future. Now, in terms of information technology, you find there are a lot of avenues, but it's important that you need to invest in the time and be prepared to harvest the opportunities as they come, or create the opportunities. Broadly, these are the 4 key areas I'd like to cover in this presentation. First, what is the need for chartered accountants to embrace information technology? Having already given the background, do we need to embrace information technology? Like somebody said, information technology is like a stream, river stream. Either you are on it or you are under it. We'll look at what are the opportunities. We'll have a quick look at it. Second, information technology compliances is becoming mandatory, and that's becoming mandatory gradually. The government of India and various other statutory bodies are forcing chartered accountants and various other citizens to move to the digital age. We'll have a quick look at what are the services which are IT enabled and where we can play a future. Many of you would already be doing this. Third is we look at what are the IT related regulations and what are the avenues for chartered accountants. One, from the perspective of regulations. Second, in terms of new services which you can provide. And fourth and last is what are the avenues for chartered accountants. This is broadly what I would like to cover in this presentation. Let's quickly look at what is the need for chartered accountants to embrace information technology. One thing is very clear, value does not come from information technology. If you have bought the best gadget, the gadget is not going to give you the benefit. The benefit is going to be how you're going to use it for the purpose of your achieving the business objective. Similarly, information technology can only provide a capability. How that capability is used to provide business services is what is going to give you the return. And the value is realized for information technology only when this information technology is rightly deployed. And that's where chartered accountants, with the domain knowledge they have, with the knowledge they have, the functional expertise they have about information systems, about regulations, can play a very important role. Now, if you look at the information technology, there are two aspects. One is the technology aspects which require technical expertise. Second is the business expertise which is required for implementing this information technology or making information technology work for the enterprise. Even if you look at large enterprises or large deployment of information technology, let's say Infosys appoint chartered accountants, and they say we need more and more chartered accountants than what the CE2 can produce. Now, if you ask them where are they using this chartered accountant, you will find they are being used as functional experts in the ERP solutions environment. Now, ERP requires a lot of time and investment to learn, but I think this particular company is using chartered accountant skills which they already have in the domain expertise of business regulations about information systems and using them for configuring the ERP as required for the business. So you have the technologists who come and deploy or implement the technology, and you have the chartered accountants who have the business expertise who come and configure the ERP package as per your business requirements. That's why they say most of the business decisions now today are not technology decisions, they are business decisions. Now, this is the advertisement which I saw recently, which talks about the pervasiveness of information technology. They say there is a new pill with an ingestible microchip which can monitor you from inside. Once you eat it, it can actually monitor. Once it gets activated, it can has tiny sensors. It can send out digital signatures, and based on that, you can monitor your heart rate, temperature to show how you are responding to the prescribed medication. And this can also probably send an SMS to your doctor. Okay, what is the impact of IT for chartered accountants in the near future? The American Institute of Certified Public Accountants did a recent survey looking at how the profession is going to be 10 years from now, 15 years from now. And this is what the survey came out with. They say CAs with solid IT skills are needed now and in the near future to design, integrate and implement advanced software systems as well as services, as to service consultants to link hardware and software solutions with sound business plans. Now, what is important is you have the latest hardware, but how do you use the hardware to provide service? And that's where the expertise comes in, and that's the expertise which chartered accountants have. Technology, they say, will continue to challenge and reshape the way we work, our lifestyles in all areas. And technology will also rewrite the styles of the business, the way business is being done. Now, if you look back 20 years from now and see how we are doing business, for example, we had telex machines, we had fax machines, now we know they no longer exist. Similarly, if you look at the way banking was done 20 years back and now, you find the complete landscape has changed. Similarly, look at income tax filing which you were doing earlier 20 years back and now, you find it's completely changed. In the same way, in the near future, there's going to be much more changes. In fact, in terms of the technology era, they say, what you have seen in the last 10 years would be nothing compared to what you're going to see in the next 1 year. That's the pace at which the technology is changing. What is the road ahead for chartered accountants? So if you are interested in providing IT implementation or consulting services, quite often chartered accountants believe that auditor means we should be only doing audit. In the IT arena, you find it's not all about IT audit, it's also about IT implementation, consulting and training. So they say, if you are interested in providing IT implementation consulting services, it's important that you get good understanding of what is the technology, what are the tools and techniques which are available to you, what are the business processes, what are the trends, and what are the regulations. More and more you find in the near future, regulatory compliance will become mandatorily automated. You will have experienced this now. If you don't know how to file the returns electronically, you cannot provide the service. So this is going to increase. Another important aspect which I think you should remember, the CA firms have to consider IT not merely as an office asset to be procured for use by staff as an office automation tool, but as a critical infrastructure with a long-term impact which can help you look at what type of services you can deliver in the near future. Just like if you look at a business and say the business has a 3-year strategic plan, they say what is that we're going to be known for in 3 years from now, what are the type of services you want to provide. Based on that, they decide what is the type of infrastructure we need to create. In the same way, as chartered accountants, we need to see what are the services we want to provide in the near future. Based on that, what is our current existing infrastructure we have, and what is the infrastructure we need to actually bridge this particular gap. So there is no doubt that chartered accountants have to become IT savvy so as to make the best use of technology for their own purpose and also for providing consulting or advisory services. If you look at some of the opportunities which are available for chartered accountants, you would have heard of the cloud computing. Most of you would have talked about cloud computing. And many of you may believe that, okay, this is a technology which is something which probably could be used in metros and other places. We are not really impacted. But you may not believe that most of you are already users of cloud environment. You may not even be aware. Simple things like, for example, you have an email account which is on Gmail or Yahoo or any other email. And now, this particular email which you have documents, you use it for various communication. This information is available on the cloud. You don't know where the database server is. You don't know who has this particular information. You don't know where the server is, where that data is going, but still you're using it. In the same way, this particular services which you're using could be extensively used for business applications. Now, if you look at the type of services we can provide, this gives you the type of potential. They say currently there is a need for more than 1 lakh people, and there is also need for regulatory framework. Just like there is the Information Technology Act, which actually propelled the growth of e-documentation by giving recognition for electronic documents, by giving recognition for electronic signature or digital signature. Same way, when you have a regulatory framework, cloud computing, they say the cloud usage is going to go in a much bigger way. In fact, research has proven that India is much ahead of US in terms of usage of cloud environment. And especially in a country like India, which is poor, which cannot really invest in huge IT infrastructure, the cloud environment, they say, could be a big bonus factor. A lot of IT companies have invested a lot of money in the cloud computing environment to create the infrastructure because they believe once you come out of the cloud computing environment, the people who are going to use extensively are not the people who are in the cities or metros, the people who are going to be in the urban or rural areas. Because when you want to use technology, you don't need to have some high-cost computer, you don't need to buy the software. You could be having a phone through which you can do the services. You could be having, let's say, a small computer that doesn't have too much capacity, which may cost less than 10,000, but you can do all the services which somebody in a city paying 50,000 rupees may be doing. So what is required for that is broadband. And the government of India has set up a large e-governance plan where they're planning to build broadband across India in a very big way. The other thing which is going to impact in a big way is what is called as mobile computing. So just like you have cloud computing, you also have mobile computing applications. In fact, the AICPA says these are the two technologies which are going to impact CS in a very big way. Now, mobile computing would mean that you can do all your business operations on your mobile itself. You find more and more applications are coming in which are providing this type of services on the mobile phone. Now, currently for you, most of the times, you may have the most expensive mobile phone, but currently it's being used mostly for voice. Now they say in the near future, probably your voice usage in a mobile phone could be only 10 to 20% and balance 80 to 90% could be data, which means you are using it for some business purposes. It could be possible you would like to know the status of your audit report or whatever information you want, you can get this information on your mobile. Now, having understood the need for information technology, let's look at what is the regulatory landscape and what the regulators are talking about information technology. The frauds which happened in the US in the last 10 years, before this was about 10 years back, have opened the eyes of regulators saying that there is a need for a governance mechanism, and that's where the Sarbanes-Oxley Act was passed in the US. And based on the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, a lot of countries across the world had their own regulations. In India also, we had what is called as Clause 49 listing requirements, which actually has all the ingredients of what is given in SOX. Now, this requires that the company has to have what is called as corporate governance. And if you study the requirements of corporate governance, you find there is a need for implementing internal controls. Broadly, if you look at governance, this is what they say. Governance is about direction and control and creating the control structures. And this is what the auditors are supposed to evaluate. You also need to look at the type of the decision mechanism they have and also what the type of control mechanism they have. And as auditors, we are supposed to be control experts. We need to know how we can provide the service. Most of the CA firms in the US and the Western countries got a very big leap in revenue because of the SOX Act. The people who got the maximum revenue, not the CAs who are actually doing SOX audit. The CAs who got this revenue is IT companies and various other people who provide consulting services for companies and how they can meet the requirements of SOX. So it means a lot of IT companies recruited CAs and CSAs from India and deputed to these particular companies across the Western world for providing them consulting services on how they can implement this governance controls within the organization by building up the documentation, by building up systems, by building up processes. And that's where the opportunity is. If you look at compliance, they say compliance with stated requirements. If you look at the compliance perspective, I had the opportunity to look at the report. As soon as the managing director of Satyam came out on, sent a message and it came on the TV that he has committed a fraud, the first thing I did was I went to the CFI's website and downloaded the annual report of this particular company. And you'd be amazed, after a lot of time I was able to download that report, and I went to that report. You'll be surprised that this company got the best governance award in Asia. Okay, they got the best corporate governance award in Asia, and they have given the corporate governance report, they have given the certification statement, they have given certification by the auditor, by the board, everybody else. Now, if you look at the documentation-wise, they have complied. But in principle, did they comply? They did not comply. Okay, so it's important to remember, compliance is not just looking at what is required and doing it, but seeing whether in principle it is being done. Quite often, there is a misconception that you buy the most sophisticated package. The package has all the controls, so we don't need to really audit it. Okay, like they say, if you are using a package, let's say like Tally, you don't need to verify the total because automatically everything is Tally. Okay. Similarly, if you buy a package like SAP, then you already invested so much money, you don't need to really bother to control. All the controls are already there. It's like saying, you buy the most expensive car, you don't need to really drive it. You don't need to really put the brake. You don't need to put the accelerator because the car will automatically take care of itself. So you may buy the best car, but you also need to have the driving skills to be able to use it properly. Okay. So similarly, if you use the information technology also, it's important that you have the proper processes in place, proper control structures in place, proper organization structure in place to see that the information technology is harnessed effectively for achieving the business objectives. So if you just take this example of risk in the governance, regulatory and compliance environment in terms of an ERP package, let's say like SAP, has what is called as segregation of duties. You can segregate duties, like we have this maker-checker concept in terms of who will do this transaction, who will complete this particular transaction. So you can build controls at each of these areas, okay, right from the time the customer has made an inquiry to the time you have collected money from him. So there are different processes and cycles which are involved, and you can have controls in each of these areas. You can ensure the transaction, that information is entered once, and the same information is used and processed throughout the cycle of the particular business by all the people who are involved. So you may believe that this particular package has the best features, you don't need to really look at the controls. But this is an example. It says that in SAP applications today, there are 20,000 transactions which can cause risk. I've come across cases where the company has bought the best ERP package, but the trial balance did not tally. They have implemented the best ERP package, but in that package, the goods are shipped, but the billing is not done. You also have negative inventory. Now, is it possible? It is possible. Like saying you buy the best car, you won't cause accident, because accidents are caused by the people who drive. In the same way, you may buy the best ERP package, But what is important is you need to configure the package as per the requirements of that particular company. And that's where chartered accountants can play an important role. Okay, what type of a course you should do? How do you get this expertise? That I think is a different, we can probably handle in a different session. But what is important is once you identify a particular area, then you can see how best you can get that expertise. Now, if you have to get expertise for auditing an ERP, for your purpose, probably it may take about, let's say, 1 week to 4 weeks, depending on your specific objectives. So what is important in information technology environment, they say, is any information technology deployment has 3 key things: people, processes, and technology. You can buy the best technology, but what's also important is that you have the requisite processes in place, you have the right people in place who can actually use technology to provide services. There is a famous example of a bank in Delhi which went in for a core banking solution, and there's a customer who went in first because he wanted to draw cash, and he said he had heard a lot about this core banking solution, so he thought probably he'll get service very fast. Earlier, in a manual environment, they used to take about 30 minutes to give him cash. So we went there, core banking solution, first day of inauguration, he went there, gave the check in the counter, and they gave him a token and asked him to wait. He said probably it was taking 30 minutes, now it should be with this type of a complete, this one IT environment, it should be much more faster. So he waited, again after 10 minutes another customer came, he also gave this one check, and he was also given a token and asked to wait. So this guy said 20 minutes passed, earlier also I used to get 30 minutes, now 20 minutes over, still I have not got my cash. He waited again for another 10 minutes, third customer came in, he also gave him cash, and after 4 or 5 customers like this, after 30 minutes, the person in the counter called and gave cash to everybody. So this person who had been waiting for 30 minutes said, see, when in a manual environment also you used to wait for 30 minutes, but it's all computerized, everything is automatic, why do you take 30 minutes? And that person said, see, I don't want to give cash for every transaction. So I want to accumulate 4 or 5 transactions, then I call all of them and give all the cash at once. So what does it show? You may have the best technology, but you also need to train people in that particular way. You also need to put process in that particular way. So when you use information technology, it's important you need to consider the requirements of the business in terms of what is the security which is required, what are the business continuity requirements which are there, and what is the knowledge base which is required. And this becomes part of the internal system. You also need to build in a system of governance. When you say governance, it's important that the senior management of the enterprise should be involved in directing and controlling how information technology is used within the enterprise. Quite often if you see, even in a CEO office, you buy the most advanced computers and you give it to some staff and they are using it. I was called by a friend who had opened a new office and he said, "Dekho, hamara paas server hai, network hai, everything." He showed me all this and he had the best computers with the latest monitors, everything. Then I asked him a few basic questions about this particular technology. He said, "Nahi, wo hamara ladka dekh leta hai, wo hamara ladki dekh leta hai." So it means he himself didn't know, okay, what are the key aspects of that particular thing for managing how the technology is being used. So in that case, what happens? So he has bought, he's using a Ferrari like a bullock cart, because he's not really involved. Because if he knows how information technology could be used, then you can actually direct how information technology could be deployed within the enterprise. So it's also important in enterprises, in organizations also, that the senior management should be involved in directing how information technology is used. And that's where now the government has made it mandatory that the senior management, the CEO and the CFO have to give a certification that the internal controls are in place. And in information technology, when internal controls are embedded within information technology, it becomes important for the CEO also to know whether we have the right system in place, whether we have the right process in place, whether we have the requisite documentation in place to demonstrate that we have this type of a control system. And it's not enough if you do it from a regulatory perspective, it's also important that you need to look at value creation. When the SOX regulation came in the US, initially, a lot of companies invested heavily in the SOX related compliances. After a few years, they realized, what is the value we should be getting? Every year we are spending money on getting this compliance certification for SOX. They said, we are spending this particular money on information technology, on putting the process in place. Let's also look at how we can use the same power which we have for creating value for the business. And that's where the perspective change comes in. And that's where CAs can play an important role. Now if you look at this Clause 49 requirements, it has a lot of key requirements. It also has the requirement for the audit committee. What is important is it makes certification by the CEO or CFO mandatory about the internal controls of the frauds which have happened, and they also need to get a certification from the auditors. Now this is where we need to distinguish and value based on my own experience. I am telling you, it may be true that this may not apply to you. Quite often, because bank audit, I think probably the bank audit is something which has spoiled us. We believe that it's a certificate, bank says another 250 rupees more, another 500 rupees more, and we sign the certificate. I was giving a presentation on bank audit in one of the cities in southern India. I went there. The previous speaker was speaking on LFAR. At that particular time, the Reserve Bank of India had implemented few questions, checklists pertaining to IT. Whether the branch has business continuity plan, whether they have taken backup IT certificate, that they have security mechanism in place, like that. There are 3-4 questions. I was supposed to be the speaker talking about bank audit, how to use computers in audit. There is earlier a senior person who was speaking on this LFAR. When he came to this last 4-5 questions pertaining to information technology, he made a very simple comment which showed the knowledge. He said, see, these are new questions which have been added. We don't need to worry too much. We ask the branch manager whether this applies, yes or no, you answer that's enough. Now, if you give the same question to me as an IS auditor, if you say, does the branch have business continuity plan, I must spend probably 2 weeks and charge them about 2 lakh rupees to give them this report or certificate. But similarly, if they ask, do you have adequate security mechanism, just to answer or give a certificate for that one report, I must spend about 3 weeks and charge them about 2.5 lakh rupees. Whereas now, a CA comes as a wholesale menu package. LFAR, there are so many questions, one more report, another 500 rupees. Another, so this is free, complimentary. So you have this particular free business, certificate business, where you believe that, okay, anything can be certified, just asking the branch manager. Before certifying, it's important you need to be aware of what is the impact of the certification, what does it ask for. Okay. When I started my career as an auditor, I also used to do general audit, different bank audits, and I used to be paranoid about, okay, there are so many questions, how can I answer? And the banks are very, very particular about getting the reports from auditors. In fact, I used to tell them, the type of follow-up you have with the auditors for collecting the reports, if you have the same follow-up with your lenders, the NPS will go down drastically. Because they're very, very aggressive in collecting this, the report. Even before you go, they'll say, when are you going? When are you give the report? Okay, they're in a big hurry. Now, as CS, when we do this audit, now there are a lot of things we need to check. So I was really concerned, can I really do this audit in this particular day, within this particular time? But when I went to the report, one of the first things we do is we look at the previous audit reports. When I looked at the previous audit report, I saw the previous report. I looked at the LFAR, and then I found it very simple. You have only 3 answers: yes, no, not applicable. Then it becomes very simple. Last year auditor has done it, before that auditor has done it, yes, no, not applicable. Then it becomes much more easier. Now you need to remember, if it is yes, have you really verified the documents to confirm it is? If it is no, do you know what is the implication or impact or consequence of that no? Similarly, if you say not applicable, are you really sure it's not applicable? And quite often I found the auditees are very good in taking you for a ride. They say, no, this is being done by the head office, this is being done by the data center, you really don't know. So it's very important that you just don't sign audit reports, bank audit reports, just based on the ready-made documents they give. They are very, very good. You don't need to even carry your letterhead. They give you ready-made. You just need to carry your sign seal. That's enough. Okay. So it's important that you apply your mind and give additional information as required. Okay. So the point which I want to demonstrate was, before answering a report, before giving a report or certifying any statement, it's important that you need to apply your mind, know what is the liability you're taking. Fortunately or unfortunately in India, we don't have many clients suing the auditors. Okay, so that's why we are very, very happy to sign any type of certificate or report with some minimum documentation. But if you look at interestingly, the same certificate you do, probably they charge about 50 times more. So it means they recognize the importance and look at what the liability is there. Now, if you look at this Clause 49 requirements, I was looking at the report because I invested in shares of some companies. I keep on looking at the reports and especially look at this corporate governance certificate. And many of the cases you find this type of report, standard report is given. So this corporate governance, anything which comes to the regulation is taken as, okay, one more certificate or one more report to be given. That's where I think we need to change the mindset. Now, if you look at the fee structure of the CPAs in the US before SOX came in and after SOX came in, probably it changed 3 times. Okay, if they're charging $10,000 before SOX regulations came in, after SOX regulations came in, just asking them to give the certificate, their fees went up by about $30,000. It means 3 times more. Whereas if you ask the companies who are doing the audit of this particular listed company and so, okay, after this corporate governance came in, how much did your fees go up? You find the answer would be very, very nominal, or in many cases, no. Okay. Now, if you look at the US companies, if you ask them, okay, before SOX, what is the expenditure on IT compliances? And after SOX compliance, okay, what is the expenditure in IT? You find there's a big leap in terms of the investment they made in IT compliance. Also, the consulting they got from consultants once the SOX compliance came in. In fact, after the Y2K, many of the IT companies were worried where is the next big opportunity going to come in. And they say many, in fact, I heard this from IT companies. So they said, once the Sarbanes-Oxley Act was passed, these two gentlemen, no, Sarbanes-Oxley, many of the IT companies put that photo there because they are like, they have given the birth to new opportunities and revenue streams for them. So they get them new opportunities. So if you look at the auditor who are charging, let's say, $10,000, now he charges $30,000. Now the consultants who came and helped them to implement this, they probably charge them about $50,000 to $1,000, $1 lakh. Okay. So if you look at Indian company in the same way, there is a corporate governance mechanism which has come in, regulatory requirement, which says you need to have the certification. And if you ask them what is the increase in annual fees, probably it may be nominal. Okay, it doesn't really make an impact. Now if you ask the same company, how many consultants did you use for implementing this internal control systems? You find hardly many would have been involved. Okay, which means we did not recognize the opportunities, or the auditors did not recognize that opportunity. Now, many of the US auditors who were supposed to do the audit, they said, no, we cannot do this audit unless you have the documentation in place. That's what created the controls in the company, and that's where the opportunity came for the auditors. So the reason I gave you this particular information was, if you look at opportunities from a regulatory perspective, that the revenue you can charge from the client is very, very nominal. Okay? But if you can demonstrate value addition in terms of what you can do, that's where you can charge the fees. Now, if you look at the Clause 49 requirement and if you read SOX, you find most of the key terms are same. So what it requires is adequacy of internal controls, you need to have reporting structure, and you also need to focus on frequency of internal audit. Most of you know, even in Caro, I think these are there to a limited extent. You also need to focus on what is called the financial risk management policies. Even if you look at report of Satyam, you find you have given a 2-page report on what the risk management practice of the company, how they take care of the risks. Similarly, as I said, you need to have a CEO, CFO certification, which talks about, okay, the CEO is responsible for establishing and maintaining internal controls and evaluating the effectiveness of internal controls. Okay, this is what the CEO and CFO is supposed to certify. And there's also need for a disclosure of the risk assessment in terms of, does the board have a risk management procedure in place, and they're supposed to give a quarterly report certified by the compliance officer. And this should also be approved by the board. So, ideally, if you look at from the point of compliance, especially in an IT environment, considering that most of the organizations, IT is extensively used, it's important that you need to make a complete reassessment of what are the type of IT risks which are there, what are the type of processes which are there existing in manual environment, and how these processes, services are provided in IT, what are the type of controls which are there in manual environment, and how these controls are implemented in IT, what are the type of documentation available in a manual environment in IT, and whenever there is a change in IT from one particular system to another system, what are the type of documentation required, what are the type of monitoring, and how do they track the deviations. And also in terms of how do we establish the roles and responsibilities for each of these persons. So primarily, if you look at the controls, you need to look at the internal processes, what are the risks, and what are the relevant controls. So what does certificate focus on? Are there materially untrue statements or omitted any material factor? And there are no fraudulent, illegal transactions violated of the company's code of conduct, and they also need to have internal controls. So this is in terms of the governance requirement that the government requires based on the corporate governance requirements that you need to have this particular mechanism. Now if you take the same information which is there, if you look at any audit report, let's say you look at the CARO, you find the same requirements are there in a diluted form. Now the question is, you can continue to keep signing the reports based on what additional requirements comes in. You find the revenue opportunity to be much lesser. But if you start looking at providing service to the company and start looking at IT, spending time on IT, and then seeing what are the controls required, what are the control weaknesses which are there, then you find you can actually provide consulting to the clients. So it's important that we need to change the mindset of the clients that for chartered accountants, IT means income tax only. Quite often if you go to a client's office, you find they would have changed the information technology, but the CA would not be consulted. But even if he gets a small notice from any of the some regulatory authorities, the first person he thinks of is the CA. But when he wants to make a massive change from the existing IT, let's say using individual dispersed systems to integrated client-server environment, the CA is not concerned at all. The CA comes into the picture when he does the audit, when he asks for the reports. This is where we need to start investing in this particular client and telling them that we have this type of expertise. Now, how do we gain this expertise? This is where the question comes in. Now, like the chicken and egg, now which comes in first? Do we get the client and then get the expertise, or do we have the expertise and then get the client? What do you think? Get the client. Now the client will tell you, okay, what is the competency? Why should I pay you for this? Okay, so it's important that you need to look at what is the opportunities, and based on that you need to invest first. Okay, but what happened as CA during the articleship, we learned about income tax. Once you start practice, we all know about income tax, and we can always attend a refresher course or a 1-day seminar, 2-day seminar. We can update ourselves on income tax because we have the basic knowledge which is there in income tax. What is also important is, in information technology also, we need to reach that base level. Once you reach that base level, then any new upgrade you can always get that. Now, if you get that base grade, then it becomes important. So to get to the base grade, probably you need to spend about 6 months to 1 year in understanding and investing in information technology expertise. Now let's look at some of the IT related regulations and what are the opportunities for chartered accountants. Now if you look at business process outsourcing, this is what we also do. For the client, we provide outsourcing for their income tax and other areas. For a BPO, many of clients have BPOs. Now if you look at a BPO, there are various regulations which are impacting BPO, which are supposed to provide. Now quite often we look at, okay, for a BPO, so yes, if they have to file an income tax, what are the regulations? Based on that we take care. But you also see, in the course of providing service for the client, there are a lot of regulations which are impacting BPOs. We need to look at this and see, are there opportunities for us to provide consulting in these particular areas? Similarly, you have heard that the Information Technology Act, IT Act 2000, which was passed in the year 2000 by the government. There are a lot of people who gave a lot of suggestions about what are the changes which have to come in, but there are hardly any suggestions from the chartered accountant community that this is the changes we want. Now, if there is a direct taxes, what do you call direct taxes bill, or what is it called? DTC, direct taxes code. You find there are hundreds and thousands of suggestions which are given by chartered accountant. This is what we need to, this is what will change, this is what will happen, and every year perhaps bill, a lot of changes happen. Now this is an important regulation which is impacting every enterprise, every citizen of the country, and we did not have a say in this. Why? Because we did not recognize that something is going to hit us. Okay. Information Technology Act was passed in the year 2000, and amendment was also made in 2008. And 2011 they also issued what is called as the Information Technology Rules. Now if you have a quick look at it, now based on this you should be able to recognize, okay, what are the clients to whom this impacts and what type of service you can provide. Now if you look at the key objectives of the Information Technology Act, what does it do? Fundamentally, it provides legal recognition for transactions carried out by means of electronic data, which means any transactions which happened electronically. Earlier, before the IT Act, this was not recognized legally. Now these transactions are recognized legally. Similarly, it facilitates electronic filing of documents with agencies and also facilitates e-governance. It also amended the Indian Penal Code, Indian Evidence Act, the Bankers Book Evidence Act, and the Reserve Bank of India Act. It establishes what is called a certifying authority for digital signature. It recognizes the digital signature. Now it has been amended as the electronic signature. And it also imposes penalties for cyber crimes. So we'll look at what are the types of cyber crimes. It also set up a mechanism for appellate authorities. Schedule 2 also provide guidelines for implementation of IT security. Now this where opportunity is there for CS also to provide consulting on IT security for those who are ESAs. In the IT 2008 amendment, this is what are the changes which are brought in. They brought in what is called a self-regulatory framework, and they made it mandatory that every enterprise, just like we have this SOC, we said every enterprise needs to have an internal control mechanism, and this has to be certified. In the same way, in the IT amendment, they brought in a regulation which says every enterprise has to implement what is called a reasonable security practices and procedures. Which means if the security is lax and the company is penalized, if the company loses data or the data is compromised, then the company's CEO and the CXOs can be sued. So it's also recognized that enterprise collect data from customers, and this could include what is called as sensitive personal data or information. The company needs to have mechanisms or controls for monitoring or managing this sensitive personal data information. So it's also talked about retention of information in electronic format. In the Income Tax Act and various other regulations, you said if there are documents, you need to maintain it for 8 years. If the document is maintained in Tally, you also Tally or any other electronic format, here also it's important that you need to maintain the documentation. Now, can we have physical documentation? Now, let's say Tally, if you're using 4 years back, it was version 6.3, then we had 7.2, 8.1, now we have got Tally.9 ERP. Okay, now the question is, if you want to use the data of, let's say, the previous version, you can't use it the current version unless you have migrated the particular data. Okay, which means legally, if you're asked, if your client has been maintaining data in Tally for the last 10 years, and if the income tax opens the case, let's say about 6 years back, and asks for the data, and this data is available in electronic form, you should be able to produce the data in electronic form. Which means it's not just enough to have printouts of this information; it's also important that we have a backup of the data. And it's not enough if you have backup of the data. Along with backup of the data, you also need to have backup of the software. Okay, not only backup of the software, you also may need to have backup of the operating system which is used. Because if you are using, let's say, Tally 5, version 5, which is running, let's say, on Windows 98, now that particular version may not run on Windows 7. Okay, so in that case, when you take a backup, and you need to have this legally, as a maintenance record, it's important you need to maintain a backup of the data in that particular way. Now, if you ask your clients how many of them maintain this type of backup data, you find many of them they don't do that at all. Okay, there are also what is called as cyber crimes. Now, if you look at the offences which are brought in now, they say what is called as offences. So these are given in section 65 to 74, and they say it could be offence against the property, which means tampering with the computer source documents, okay, or hacking, or its person sends obscene mails, or there is a cyber trespass, or there is a trespass of confidentiality and privacy. And there's also crimes against the government or sovereign agencies. So this gives you a category of type of crimes which are there and how the person can be prosecuted. Now there's also sample checklist which tells you if you look at providing service for a client on Information Technology Act. Now if you go to if you search on Information Technology Act, you find a lot of advocates and various other professionals who provide what is called as compliance services or health check services for compliance with IT Act. Now, if you ask chartered accountants how many of them provide this type of services, you find many of them are not even aware that this is a service which can be provided. And this really doesn't require too much of information. Now, if you compare the Information Technology Act, which is only about 80 pages compared to any other Companies Act or any other this one, for you, I think it's child play. In fact, I was studying for the CPA exam, and I was surprised there are only 4 papers. 2 papers of 4 hours and 2 papers of 3 hours, which means about 14 or 15 hours of exam. And it's completely objective type. With about 14 to 15 hours of exam, I can become a CPA. When I compare with what I studied for CA, you find it we have really gone through hell in terms of the type of investment we make. Okay. Now, but that person is also CPA, we are also CAs. Okay, we studied so much. But the question is, how much of knowledge which we got are we really using? Now, the reason I gave you this example was, now having got this expertise in Income Tax, Company Act, any other matter, this one, if you want to specialize on Information Technology Act, there could be people here who could probably read this in one day and then start interpreting and providing services. Okay, so I suggest if you want to download this, go to this search for Information Technology Act, you can download this, or you go to search.in, you will get this information, you can download it, study it, you will be able to find what are the type of services you can provide. Now this gives you a sample checklist in terms of compliance services you can provide. Now this is not applicable for any particular company. You find most of the companies they need to have this mechanism. Now, do enterprises comply with this? Now, the answer is many of them don't know that they need to comply. Okay, so which means they're not even aware that you need to comply. It's being done. The only problem is when there is a fraud happens, when the crime which happens, then somebody prosecutes, then the problem comes in. Now, we can be proactive and tell the client that this is what the services we can provide. For example, 43A. You need to recognize what is sensitive personal data, and based on that, you can say whether they're actually providing security for this. Similarly, does the enterprise have a security policy and whether the security policy is documented? Similarly, if you look at whether there is electronic records which are being done, are they preserved, and what is the retention policy of the enterprise pertaining to this? And you find most of these questions, if you have passed the ESA exam, you will find most of these answers you can definitely give. or this service you can easily provide. Similarly, there is section 70B, which talks about documentation for the request of certain, whether there are certain cyber security incidents. Similarly, is there a privacy policy of the enterprise and whether it meets the requirements. And the enterprise is supposed to have one person who is supposed to be called as a compliance officer who is responsible for ensuring compliance. This talks about body corporate. For body corporate, there is a separate section 85, which is if a person, if a company contravenes these provisions, what is the prosecution and how they would be held responsible. So primarily, if you look at from the security implications, there are different dimensions. One from the point of government, which is in terms of providing the regulations and the policies. And the government of India now has what is called as a lawful interception, which means all the emails which you're sending, all the documentation you're exchanging can be accessed by the government and then will be reviewed. Okay. Similarly, from the enterprise point of view, you have what is called as contractual agreements. When you are entering the contract with any IT service provider, you can actually review the SLA to see whether they're actually providing service as per the agreed SLS. You also can look at what is called as risk management, compliance, IT security strategy, and various other policies. And for a citizen who is using internet, you have what is called as data privacy and you have what is called as safe browsing. This is the way the information technology impact these three types of users. Now this gives you what are the 7 basic compliance requirements. If you look at from this compliance requirements, like have Income Tax Act, what is it you're supposed to do? If you say 6 key things a salary person has to do, 4 key things which a person who has got income from this house property has to do. Similarly, if you look at from the person's enterprises, if an enterprise has the Information Technology Act which is applicable to them, then what is that they need to do? This gives you 7 things they need to do. Designate a cyber law compliance officer. They need to initiate training of the employees, introduce sanction procedures in HR policy for non-compliance. If somebody, for example, let's say somebody uses unauthorized software or unlicensed illegal software, then what is the impact? If an employee uses illegal software and if that company doesn't have an agreement with the employee or there is no document says the company specifically does not use illegal software or the company permits only licensed software to use in the company, if the company doesn't have that statement or declaration signed by the employee, then a company can be sued for any of the wrong done by the employee. You also need to look at data retention, what are data is being done, how is it being, what are the procedures maintained for that, and also what are the standards they need to follow for data privacy. Okay, let's quickly look at what are the type of avenues which are available for CS based on what we discussed. Now traditionally, our traditional areas we look at internal auditing or statutory auditing, filing of returns or compliances or in management information systems. We're quite happy skipping. Okay. Now if you look at the new areas, now you find there is not only electronic filing of documents, there could be web-based business which is business done electronically. There could also be assurance required for this. In fact, the other like American Certified Public Accountants has come up with separate courses which provides a certification of business which is done on e-commerce. We also have what is called e-enabling business operations, which means an enterprise wants to use information technology, which means they want to sell on the internet. The CA can provide consulting services to them in terms of how they can migrate or provide services of selling on the internet. Now, if you look at broadly, okay, this is a slide which I got from one of my friends. They say broadly you can categorize into 4 areas. Okay, we have accounting expertise, we have solid understanding of process and staff functions, we also have understanding of the compliance and the controls, and we have understanding of the information systems, technology and audit. Okay, based on these 4 key strengths we have, what type of services we can provide? They say we are uniquely qualified to provide services relating to information technology areas, which could also be called as database services. Now, if you look at the business opportunities, or let's say practice opportunities, you have what is called database services, emerging trends, onshore and offshore services, knowledge centers, consulting systems. These are the broad areas. If you look at the first one, if you look at consulting services, what you do traditionally, you can set up a company, you can provide due diligence to them, you can provide assurance, we can look at mergers and acquisitions, taxation, business continuity. These are the broad areas. Similarly, if you look at from the database outsourcing services, for a company wants to provide outsourcing services, which means they want to sell, they want to do outsourcing. Similarly, if you look at the emerging trend, what's going to happen in the future, what CAs are providing. Now, this is in terms of onshore or offshore services. And if you look at in terms of knowledge We have what is called as the surveillance hostility, which is similar to clause 49. We also have what is called activity-based costing. You can use CAD tools, and you can also provide certification on various types of regulatory requirements. Now, what is important is how do you get started? Which is that one thing which can get you started. What do you think can get you started for this? Or to ask you another way, what is preventing you from exploring into this area?
No clients. No clients in this area.
No clients in this area. Okay, very good. Anything else?
We want big companies. We want big companies.
Oh, we don't get big company answer. Okay. Lack of expert knowledge. Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. I'll answer the question at the end. Okay. What are the avenues? If you broadly categorize this, you can look at in terms of consulting opportunities. The consulting opportunity could be in terms of governance, providing services pertaining to governance, implementation, or software implementation, or hardware acquisition. It could be pertaining to implementation, MIS, or taxation. It could be pertaining to design and development for the company. They want to develop software or deploy software in the enterprise, or they want to provide training services, or it could also be assurance services. Okay, this gives you the three broad areas. One is IT-enabled reporting. The second one they say is IT-enabled business. Okay. Now, if you look at enterprises which actually have to go on the internet, any enterprise, wherever they are, they can sell whatever they are doing, selling over the physical store, they can also sell on a digital store. Okay. The investment which is required could be very, very nominal, provided you know what is the process which needs to be done. Now, if you ask you, how many of your companies have businesses, they sell things. Now, if they are selling, okay, would they like to sell this on the internet? If they'd like to sell on the internet, now the question is, what type of services you can provide? Do you know enough of the business process for the particular company to be able to provide the services on the internet? Which means, if they're selling these goods physically, can they sell these goods electronically through the internet? Now, if you look at e-commerce, what are the challenges if a company wants to go in for e-commerce? The web merchant, the merchants may be bogus where you want to buy. The customers may be fictitious. The electronic documents may not be authentic. The trading partners may deny they were a party to the transaction. You may also find the transactions may be intercepted, which means there could be a risk in each of these areas. What we need to understand is, in a physical environment, when commerce takes place, there are particular transactions which happen. There are particular regulatory requirements that need to be taken care of. Similarly, when the commerce happens in an electronic environment, there are regulatory requirements that are met. There are regulatory documents that need to be created. There are certain processes that need to be followed. Now, if you are aware of these particular processes, then you will be awakened, then you will be aware of what is the type of services or consulting opportunities we get. Now, similarly, if you look at objectives IS audit, most of you have done ESA, you are already aware that you can do what is called an information systems audit. What are the type of audit? What is important is you need to be aware of what are the control objectives. Okay, if you look at the control objectives, those of you who have passed ESA exam or studied for the ESA exam, you know they consider two things. One is controls. The control refers to the policy, procedure, practices and the organized structure that are designed to provide reasonable assurance that business objectives are achieved or undesired events are prevented or detected and corrected. So you find the most important thing is the business orientation and the implementation of the required policy, procedure, practices. Now you find the same definition of control is applicable in the IT environment also. Which means even in the IT environment, you need to be aware of what are the controls which are required. Similarly, if you look at the control objective says what is that you are going to accomplish by implementing a particular controls. So when you want to provide what is called an IT assurance services, and you want to do audit of an IT process, this is what you need to do. Okay. Now I want you to look at this look at the distinction between a tax audit or a statutory audit and what is done in the case of an IT audit. And tell me what is it you do and what is it which is different here. Now obtain and understand the business requirement, related risks and relevant control measures. This is done. Any type of audit? You agree? Okay. Evaluate the appropriate status controls. Okay, what are the controls, whether the controls are adequate for the enterprise. Okay, assessing the compliance by testing whether the stated controls are working as prescribed consistently and continuously. Okay, there are controls to the enterprises that are in place. You're checking whether they're actually working in terms of compliance testing. And then you also do a detailed verification of the transactions to confirm whether these controls are working as prescribed. Now, is there a difference between reviewing controls in a manual environment vis-a-vis a computerized environment? Does the process change? Do you think the process change? Do the objectives change? The scope objective does not change, the area doesn't change. What has to change is how you audit this particular technology. Just like they say, long back, people used to go from one place to another. Okay, so they used to walk, after that they used to go by bullock cart, after that they used to go by horse. Now people go by cars, by buses and by trains and by flights. Okay, the objective of people to move from one destination to another was always there. But what has changed is the mechanism of the technology is being used. Okay. Similarly, if you look at business enterprises, the need for business of trading was always there. The thing which has changed is what is the mechanism of the process through which this trade happens, and this is where technology becomes a key enabler. Okay, if you are doing IT audit, this is what you need to understand. So it means the distinction between auditing in a manual environment and in a computerized environment is you need to understand, in addition to understanding the business process, the regulations, etc., you also need to understand what is the type of the IT resources which are deployed within the enterprise. What type of technology facilities they have, what are the technology they have, what type of hardware they have, what applications, what are the data and what are the people. So it means in general, you should have an understanding of the information architecture of the enterprise, especially as it moves in an electronic form. Okay. In a physical environment, we know if the transactions happen, it's recorded in the primary book. From there, it's copied to the secondary books, which is called as posting. We have the ledgers, and then from there, you extract the trial balance, the balance sheet, profit and loss account, etc. So you can trace the transaction from the destination to the origination, or from the origination to the destination, and you can review the controls. Now, the same information is available in electronic format. Then you should know how controls are implemented and how do you audit this particular environment. Now, if I ask you, now auditing this, for example, if the client is maintaining the accounts for whom you're doing tax audit, or let's say you're doing a statutory audit, if the client is maintaining this account in a computer, in a package called Tally, okay, if you're auditing that particular business who is using Tally for tax audit, to me, you are doing a part of information systems audit. Whether you're doing or not, that's a different thing. But for me, I would personally consider that you're actually doing a part of the information systems audit, because you cannot do a complete and comprehensive audit unless you looked at what is the information which is there within Tally, which is being maintained, how it's being maintained, what are the processes and the controls which are there. Okay. So if you look at in terms of where are the opportunities, the opportunities are not something new which are going to be created. The opportunities are there in your existing clients. So one of the first things I always say for people who say we don't have opportunities is, I say first make a list of your existing clients. Okay, all the clients which you got. Okay, in terms of the mark the turnover they have got. Second column, you make a list of the items, how many computers they have. Okay, any client who is using more than 5 computers would be a client for whom you can do an information systems audit. Okay, in the first instance, whatever audit you're doing, whether you're doing tax audit or this one, statutory audit, whatever audit you're doing, you spend another 1 week extra in understanding the information technology, looking at the controls. Once you are able to do that, then you find you can create new opportunities. Okay. So if you want to use the best practices framework, there are global best practices like Hubli which are available, which can be used as a framework for doing any type of IS audit. Which shows that if you want to do information systems audit, there are best practices that are readily available which can be customized. Just like you use, let's say, auditing standards for doing audit. Similarly, you want to do information systems audit, there are international regulations and best practices which are available. Which also gives you a framework of what are the key things you need to look at, what are the enablers you have. Okay, it also gives you, if you're looking at a point of governance, you need to look at what are the enablers, what is the scope, and how responsibility is implemented in an IT environment. Okay, this gives you the perspective, the linkage between the governance and management. So at the top you have the business needs which you need to embed, and then you have governance which is defined primarily in terms of evaluate, direct and monitor, This is based on the ISO definition, which is given in ISO 38500, which is primarily the board of directors and the senior management have to be involved in ensuring that the business is directed and controlled. And this is done through a three-step process, which is called evaluate, direct and monitor. And based on that, they need to have the requisite management structures. And in management, we have what is called as plan, build, run and monitor. Okay, so if you look at sample areas audit, depending on what is given in COVID, you have different types of processes from which you can generate different types of IS audit avenues. Now, if you're looking in terms of avenues, what I suggest is I have given a 10-page print article. Okay, the first 4 pages gives the theory, last 6 pages gives you what is called as the sample scope and areas of practice. Okay, so what I suggest is there's only 6 pages, spend about 1 hour just going through that. Okay, look at what are the places where services can be provided by you based on the existing knowledge. Now, if you have to get this information on 6 pages, probably you may have to spend about 6 days to collect this information. Okay, this gives you the 37 processes based on which I have compiled that particular information in terms of scope and areas. I'm just giving you some example. Let's say if you look at managed security, you want to implement security. In many enterprises, if they are using computers in a network environment, it's important they need to have service of review, they need to have IT assurance pertaining to security. What is that you will be looking at in this particular area? This is the scope of that particular assignment, and this gives you the objectives. Okay, keep the impact and occurrence of information security incident within the enterprise risk appetite levels. Next, this gives you the areas you need to review. Whether they have information security management system, how is it defined, how do you maintain and review the security management system. Similarly, if you look at business continuity, it becomes important for any enterprise using information technology. The simple question you need to ask is, if you remove information technology, can the business continue? If the business cannot continue with the information without information technology, then you know that particular client has to have a business continuity plan. And you can provide an assurance whether they have adequate business continuity plan. Now this gives you the scope and objective of this. This gives you the area you can look at. This similarly gives you for the managed security services, the scope and area, what are the areas you need to look at. Similarly, if you look in terms of, let's say, compliance requirement, monitor and assess compliance with external requirements. What is the scope you will be looking at? And then what are the objectives you will be reviewing? And then this gives you the areas of review. Now, what you need to understand is when you look at information technology, primarily you're looking at there are processes that are being performed, whether it's accounts receivable, order processing, or sales processing. Okay, based on the technology is being used, based on the infrastructure is there. There are controls at each of these areas. Now, some of the core technology areas, for example, network security, you may not be able to do the audit. But controls in any of the business process, whether it's accounts receivable, order processing, or any other sales process, or anything for that matter, as CS, when you have a quick walkthrough of this, you can definitely review the controls and confirm whether they're working. Okay, so what is important is to identify what are the control objectives for each of these areas. For example, if a sales happens, what should be the controls which should be inbuilt into the system? Okay, and whether these have been implemented. So you look at what is ideally should be there in that environment, what is the existing environment, the difference between what is existing and what should have been ideally there is a control weakness or a gap or an area of improvement. Now if you look at in terms of the road ahead, in terms of opportunities for audit or what is going to happen, you'll find more and more we have portable computers, which means you'll have computers which are there, which are powerful in your applet or mobile phone, okay, or tablets, which means you can audit anywhere, anytime, anyhow. So it requires lesser traveling. You can access the information from anywhere. You can do the audit from anywhere. You can access the information in central place. You'll have to spend more time on analysis rather than the routine procedure verification. And this is where you need to use technology tools like CAD tools. You also need to build up what's called a knowledge-based audit system. Because in information technology, if you build a system once, you can replicate and use the same system any number of times. You'll find there are less use of staff and more use of IT. Like they say, the cost of technology in a car is much more than the cost of fuel. So what is most important is, do you have the right tools? And this is what you can ask. How can I fish if you don't know, don't give me the tool? Okay, what good is the tool if I don't know how to use it? How can I use it if I don't know what fish to catch and where the fish is? I want you to ask these questions, and based on the answers you get, you will find the opportunities. Okay, this is a summary of what we said. There is the need for chartered accountants to embrace technology, whether they accept it or not, it's going to become all pervasive. Okay? And governance, risk and compliance is applicable not only for large enterprises, applicable for small enterprises also in a limited way, and this way you can provide service. Okay? There are regulations which are going to become more and more automated, which will require that we need to look at the IT environment. And the opportunity for creating, if you're looking at opportunities to come from regulation, then I think the opportunities are going to be limited. But if you look at the opportunity of consulting, that's where I think there are a lot of opportunities. Like they say, all challenges are opportunities, and IT is one such continuing challenge. Now the important thing is how well prepared or equipped you are to meet this particular challenge. The objective of my presentation was to just provide you some eye-openers and some insights of how you can actually walk through this particular path. And I spoke based on my own experience of having used information technology for more than 20 years. So thank you very much. So we just have 5 minutes. Is that okay?
Question session will be after the second session, sir.
Okay. No, I will not be there.
You can proceed.
Yeah. Okay. Any question? Okay, I showed this slide recently. Probably I thought this could be useful. Can you hear the audio? Is there a message here? Okay, if you look at technology, audit they say is all about collecting and evaluating evidence. Okay, you can collect, you can fish, like you said about the fish, you can do the traditional way, where you wait for this one, collect evidence, or you can use information technology, use the technique and pick up what you want. Okay, so probably you will not wait for the fish, but you will get the fish when you want. When you use technology, this is what many enterprises find.
Oh, we find, die Wäsche fertig sein.
Okay. Quite often, when enterprise want to use information technology, they take the help of consultants. Okay, and they think they're actually getting a service. But what could happen? Now we're talking about opportunities. Are there opportunities? Now this, what can happen if you use technology without understanding what technology is going to use, or without understanding the risks. Quite often management believes this is how they can make technology work. But if you make technology work in this way, it has its own challenges and problems. Okay, let me look at this way. Quite often enterprise also look at information technology from this perspective. Okay. So this shows that there is always a gap between what the management wants from technology, but what actually happens. Now, if you find any of your businesses are facing this sort of challenge, then there is an opportunity. Okay, thank you. If there is any question, we'll take it. Okay, thank you very much.